Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to be talking all about Mercado Libre, or MEL, as you know it, on the stock market.
Yeah, so
Is this a stock worth watching?
we'll stay tuned and we'll find out together, right? We are going to be going through their recent earnings report and transcript, give you the insights you need.
Awesome. You know what's interesting to me?
What's that?
Mercado Libre isn't just one thing.
Yeah.
It's like e-commerce and FinTech. So it's almost like a two-for-one company.
Yeah, I mean, what's fascinating here is that, you've got this company that's not just content with being like an Amazon or a PayPal. They want to do it all.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. So they've got the Mercado Libre marketplace, which is basically the Amazon of Latin America, right?
Exactly, but they don't stop there. They also have Mercado Pago, their financial technology platform. Think of it as a way to manage your money online and offline. Kind of like PayPal, but with even more features.
So it's like having the power of Amazon and PayPal all rolled into one company. No wonder investors are interested. And speaking of investors, their Q4 2024 results look pretty impressive. They blew past expectations, record logistics productivity, and really incredible user engagement. People are really active on their platforms.
That's right, but they did have a profit miss in Q3. Now, this raises an important question. How do they balance growth with profitability? It's a classic dilemma for any company, especially one as ambitious as Mercado Libre.
Right, it's that whole philosophy of spend money to make money. But what is their long-term strategy? How are they planning to dominate the market?
Well, their game plan kind of rests on three pillars. First, e-commerce penetration in Latin America is still relatively low. We're talking maybe around 10% compared to over 20% in the US and China. So that's a massive untapped market for Mercado Libre to capture as more people in that region start shopping online.
So they're banking on the fact that Latin America is just getting started with e-commerce.
Exactly. Their second pillar focuses on providing financial products to what we would call underserved populations. A lot of people in Latin America don't have access to traditional banking, so Mercado Pago is filling a major gap by offering accessible financial services.
It's like they're creating a whole new financial ecosystem for a huge population. That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And the third pillar of their strategy is really the digitalization of cash transactions. They're riding this global wave as more and more people move away from cash and embrace online payments.
Okay, that makes sense. But talk is cheap.
Right.
What are some of the cool, concrete things they're doing to really stand out?
Well, let me tell you, they've got some seriously cool innovations going on. Imagine being able to try on makeup virtually before you buy it.
Whoa.
Yeah. Or how about scheduling a tire change and having the tires delivered right to you through their platform?
What?
Yeah.
That's
They've
awesome.
got that covered too.
Wow, they sound like they're pulling out all the stops, but surely they're not operating in a vacuum. What about the competition? Are there other companies breathing down their neck?
Of course. Competition is fierce, especially in the fintech space with players like Nubank making big moves. But Mercado Libre has some serious advantages. A huge user base, an established logistics network, and that constant drive to innovate. They're not letting anyone catch them off guard.
So it sounds like they're in a pretty strong position, but I'm sure no investment comes without risks. What are some of the potential red flags investors should be aware of?
That's a great question, and there are a few things to keep in mind. First, the macroeconomic situation in Latin America can be volatile. Things like currency fluctuations, inflation, and political instability can impact their business. Then there's credit risk, especially in countries like Brazil where interest rates are rising.
And I imagine their constant investments, while good for the long term, could also squeeze their profit margins in the short term.
Exactly, it's a balancing act for sure. But even with these risks, there's a lot of excitement surrounding MELI. Analysts are pretty divided, though.
Oh, what are the bulls saying?
Well, the bulls are loving the growth potential, Mercado Libre's market dominance, and their expanding fintech offerings. They see this as a company that's really well positioned for the future.
But I bet the bears have a different perspective, right?
Oh, yeah.
What are their concerns?
The bears are wary of the competition, the macroeconomic risks we just discussed, and the fact that the stock might be a bit overvalued at its current price. It's definitely not a clear-cut case.
So it sounds like there are valid points on both sides. This is where it gets really interesting for me. What does the earnings transcript tell us about how these factors are playing out on the ground in key markets like Brazil and Argentina?
That's precisely where we headed next.
Ooh.
We'll break down their performance in specific country, dig into their plans for advertising revenue, and ultimately help you decide if LED deserves a spot on your watch list.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're continuing our exploration of Mercado Libre, and this time we're getting granular. Let's crack open that earnings transcript and see how things are shaking out in specific markets, starting with their biggest player, Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil is really the bellwether for Mercado Libre's overall performance. And the good news is their fourth quarter there was incredibly strong. They exceeded expectations across the board. From e-commerce to fintech, even hit record logistics productivity.
Oh, wow.
That means they're getting those packages delivered faster and more efficiently than ever before.
That's a good sign. But we did talk about concerns over rising interest rates in Brazil and that potential impact on credit risk. Did the transcript shed any light on that?
It did, and it seems like Mercado Libre is taking a proactive approach. They've tightened their lending standards, being more selective about who they give credit to and shortened payback periods on new loans. So essentially, they're taking steps to mitigate those potential defaults.
That's encouraging to hear. They're not just ignoring the risk, they're actively managing it. Okay, so Brazil looks promising. What about Argentina? They've been dealing with a lot of economic volatility lately.
Yeah, Argentina's a really interesting case. Despite all the challenges, Mercado Libre managed to achieve some pretty impressive growth in their credit portfolio.
Really?
Yeah, it seems their strategy of providing financial services to those underserved populations is really paying off.
So even in a volatile market, they're finding opportunities to thrive. What's their secret sauce in Argentina?
Well, they're tapping into a real need. Many people in Argentina don't have access to traditional banking, so Mercado Libre is filling that gap.
Interesting.
They're also using some innovative financial tools like securitization to kind of fuel their growth.
Securitization.
What they do is they bundle loans together and sell them to investors, and this allows them to expand their credit business without taking on too much risk themselves.
Ah, so they're spreading the risk while still capitalizing on the opportunity. Smart move. We've covered Brazil, Argentina. What's the story in Mexico?
Mexico is another bright spot for Mercado Libre. They're seeing robust growth across both their e-commerce and fintech businesses, and they've been making strategic investments in their Mexican logistics network, which has led to faster delivery times and happier customers.
So they're firing on all cylinders in Mexico as well, but I'm sure it's not all smooth sailing. Did the transcript mention any challenges or potential setbacks?
They did mention some cannibalization between their credit card and consumer loan products in Mexico.
Oh,
But don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. It just means some customers who were using their consumer loans are now switching to their credit cards. It's more of a shift within their own product ecosystem rather than a loss of business.
okay, so they're kind of competing with themselves in a way, but ultimately they're still winning. So overall, the picture in these key markets looks pretty positive. But what about the bigger picture? We talked about risks earlier. Did the transcript raise any specific red flags we should be aware of?
One thing that stood out was their mention of potential margin compression in both Argentina and Brazil in 2025.
Margin compression. What exactly does that mean, and should we be worried?
It essentially means their profit margins might shrink a bit, which could impact their earnings. And the main reason for this is their plan to continue investing heavily in things like warehouse capacity, advertising, and technology.
So it's that balancing act. Again, investing for future growth, but potentially taking a hit on profitability in the short term. Seems like a calculated risk. But what about those cool innovations they're working on? Did they go into more detail about them in the transcript?
Absolutely. Remember that virtual makeup try-on we mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
They discussed that in more depth, emphasizing their commitment to creating a more engaging and personalized shopping experience.
That's really smart. They're not just focusing on price or convenience. They're trying to create a truly enjoyable and immersive shopping experience.
Exactly. And they're not stopping there. They're also exploring innovative solutions for things like tire changes and grocery delivery. They want to become a one-stop shop for all sorts of consumer needs.
It's incredibly ambitious, but if anyone can pull it off, it's Mercado Libre with their track record and resources. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I know there's still more to unpack, especially when it comes to their long-term strategy. What else does the earnings transcript reveal about their plans for growth and profitability?
There's still plenty to discuss, especially regarding how they're addressing competition and their ambitious plans for advertising revenue, but we'll have to save that for the final part of our deep dive.
You're killing me with these cliffhangers. Don't miss the exciting conclusion to our Mercado Libre deep dive in part 3, where we'll delve into those key questions for investors and help you decide if MELI is a stock you should be watching. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our Mercado Libre investigation, and I'm ready to get down to brass tacks. We know they're performing well, but how are they planning to stay ahead of the game in the long run? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question for any investor, right?
Right.
And the earning transcript gives us some valuable clues. Let's start with the elephant in the room, competition. Remember, companies like Nubank are hot on their heels, especially in that fintech arena.
Right, so how is Mercado Libre battling these rivals? Are they just relying on their size and existing user base to stay ahead?
Size definitely helps, but they're not complacent. They're really leveraging their strengths, like that incredible logistics network they've built, their constant stream of innovations, and that deep understanding of the Latin American market. They're playing smart.
Okay, that makes sense, but I need details. What did they actually say in the earnings transcript about their competitive strategy?
They emphasized a few key points. First, they're doubling down on customer experience.
Okay.
They know that if they can make shopping and managing finances on their platforms seamless and enjoyable, people will stick around.
It's all about creating those loyal customers who keep coming back for more.
Right.
So it's not just about having the lowest prices, it's about the whole experience.
Exactly. They're investing heavily in personalization, faster deliveries, and user-friendly payment options. It's all about removing those friction points and making every interaction delightful. They also emphasize their commitment to understanding the unique needs of Latin American consumers.
So they're not just copying and pasting what works in other markets. They're really tailoring their approach to the specific cultural and economic realities of Latin America.
Precisely. That local expertise gives them a real edge. But let's talk about the financial side of things. We discussed those potential margin pressures earlier. How are they planning to boost profitability in the long run?
That's what I want to know, because investing in growth is great, but at the end of the day, investors care about profits.
Absolutely. And that's where their advertising strategy comes into play. They see enormous potential to grow their advertising revenue. And they're investing in new ad products and platforms to attract even more brands and agencies.
So they're turning their massive user base into a gold mine for advertisers.
Exactly. It's a classic network effect. More users attract more advertisers, leading to more revenue, which they can then reinvest in the platform to make it even better. They're already seeing strong growth in their advertising business, and they believe they can achieve similar ad penetration levels as other global e-commerce giants.
It's a pretty compelling strategy, but it's not just about today, is it?
Right.
They need to be thinking about the future too.
Right, and they are. They're investing in cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence. They believe these advancements will help them hyper-personalize the shopping experience, optimize their logistics, and even create entirely new products and services that we can't even imagine yet.
Wow. So they're not afraid to bet on the future and push the boundaries of what's possible. They're not content with being just an e-commerce or fintech company. They want to be a technology powerhouse. It's a bold vision,
It is, but as with any investment, there are always risks.
of course.
The Latin American macroeconomic environment can be unpredictable, competition is fierce, and there's no guarantee their investments will pay off as they expect.
Right, we have to acknowledge those risks. But even with those uncertainties, it seems like Mercado Libre is in a strong position for continued growth. They have a proven track record, a smart growth strategy, and a leadership team that's thinking ahead. I'm personally convinced I'm putting MEL on my watch list.
I don't blame you, but remember this deep dive was just a starting point. It's up to each individual investor to do their own research, weigh the risks and rewards, and decide if Mercado Libre is the right investment for them.
Absolutely, that's the beauty of the deep dive. We equip you with the knowledge and insights you need to make informed decisions, but ultimately the choice is yours. And speaking of choices, you can choose to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on future deep dives into fascinating topics just like this one.
We cover everything from the latest tech trends to the future of healthcare, so if you want to be in the know, make sure you're subscribed.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Mercado Libre.
Happy investing!